Welcome to the KellFire Show. I am Dr. Kelly Barron, and today I am so excited to have Bev Mitelman on. She is the founder of Securely Loved. Welcome, Bev. She is a certified relationship and attachment trauma practitioner and, which I love, certified menopause specialist with over 25 years in personal growth. Bev helps people break toxic relationships, cycles, not just the relationships, the cycles as well, rebuild self-worth, and communicate with confidence in love, parenting, and family life. So, Bev, welcome. I am so excited to have you on today. And we just decided that we were going to just get right to the heart of it and just let the
Sure.
conversation flow. So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you got to where you are, and we'll go from there.
That's great. Thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. I'm really happy to be here with you and your audience. My story is probably similar to a lot of people that are listening. Next month, I'm turning 50. So I know, glad to
Exactly.
make it there. There were moments I wasn't sure. Uh, and my journey into midlife hit really, I would say, around the time that I turned 40, maybe even a little bit earlier, right?
Wow.
And so the last decade has been uh, a huge learning for me, very, very challenging. And at the same time, I've got this expertise in attachment styles and relationships. And so I started seeing all sorts of things that were coming up for me during this time that I had read about, but not yet experienced. And then I experienced it. I experienced what it was to go through midlife and how that changes your mental health and how that changes your relationship dynamics. And so I created for myself a subspecialty around midlife and perimenopause because, in my belief, we don't talk enough about the mental health changes that come with perimenopause, right? So I'm grateful that we're now talking about perimenopause. But if you ask 10 people on the street what it is, 9 out of 10 will say, some hot flashes,
Exactly.
right? Which is like, that could be true. First of all, hot flashes usually come towards the middle or the end of perimenopause. It's certainly not all women, and it's certainly not at the beginning of perimenopause when we see that huge change in about 40% of women report at that time that they start to not feel like themselves. They start to lose, resilience to stress. They're really tired even though they sleep. They feel a little more sensitive. All of these small, we call them small because oftentimes it's easy to sort of dismiss them. But
Right.
these little changes that start to creep up that really account for what most women will say, I just don't feel like myself. So it's that usually we're talking about from 40 to 45 as the experience of perimenopause is sort of starting. So and because I work with women who are, in their 40s, in their 50s, so very often, I was seeing the intersect in my own practice as well of women who were going through these hormonal changes, sort of unaware because our medical system is not well educated on what this change looks like. And they were experiencing all sorts of relational problems, mainly in their romantic relationships, and things that were once okay were no longer okay.
Right.
Right. And it's so interesting. I don't want to go too off topic, but just a couple of weeks ago, there was a huge special on Oprah. She was doing an episode on gray divorce. And she was
Yes.
talking about how the divorce rates for couples over the age of 50, gray divorce, has tripled since 1990. And how this was fascinating in itself. But in reality, the elephant in the room is that is that decade when women are going through these massive changes, right? So there's a very strong intersect between your attachment style, your mental health, the relationships that you have to yourself and to your romantic partner, and other people, and it's all happening in that 40s and 50s. So it's such an interesting topic.
I think it's so fascinating because it is, you know, if you talk to um women now that are in their 60s, going into their 70s, our mothers, grandmothers, and everybody they'd start going through these changes, but the thought process, because we're not supposed to complain, we're supposed to just carry on, take care of everything, was, well, I'm so tired of, I've raised the kids, it's worn me down, I'm feeling older, or job related stress and things of that nature. And it is kind of just explained, or we felt this is just a natural occurrence. It's just being worn out from all the years of
Mhm.
giving to other people. Little did we know, right? Little did we know. Now, to your point of what's going on.
Yeah, and if I hear one more person say, "It's just a natural process," like,
Nope.
there are lots of things that are natural, but that doesn't mean that we have to suffer, right?
Right.
So the change here is that women suffered in silence because they were offered no support. They generally didn't have a voice. We have a lot more agency in our society today to be able to speak about it. It's not that our mothers and grandmothers didn't suffer. It's that A, they didn't know what it was. B, when they did go to their doctors, because many did, they were gaslit. You're getting older, it's normal. It's stress, it's normal. And that's all they heard for years and years and years. And you probably are aware of the fact that back in the 70s and 80s, hormones were being used for women going through the transition. And then there was a large scale study that was done and erroneously labeled estrogen as potentially causing an increase in breast cancer. And this came out in the 90s, about 25 years ago. And from that point on, the last 2 or 3 decades, the actual prescribing of hormones just came to a halt.
Did.
And that was because of this study that was erroneously misinterpreted and splashed across newspapers. Estrogen causes breast cancer. Now, there's nothing scarier to a woman, right? And so now, fast forward to today's date, we know that's not true. We have lots of data suggesting that estrogen is quite actually preventative, right? In terms of a lot of diseases, metabolic health, bone health, mental health, and so we're seeing a turning of the corner and a new conversation that is emerging out of this, saying that no, we don't have to just suffer. That's not a part of aging. That's not normal.
Right. I know that 'cause I'm about to turn 55 this week. So,
Happy
uh,
birthday.
thanks. I'm getting old. But actually, no,
It's good.
I'm happy with where I'm at. But, up until recently, till I started doing the podcast, I started listening to women's stories and experts. I too was my thought process was, I'm not getting estrogen. I'm not I'm not going to do that. It's not good for me. I'm a martyr. I'm going to carry on naturally. I can
Mhm.
beat this lifestyle. And while some people can, they don't need, everyone's different. And like you
Yes.
said in the beginning, everyone's journey through perimenopause and menopause is completely different. But just recently, I decided, why am I doing that? Like, what good is coming from saying, I did it natural? Um, so I last week ordered a full blood panel, hormones, everything. And I'm going to tell you, when the results are read back to me and I see my options and what my levels are, I am not going to shy away. Why shouldn't we embrace something that's going to make our life better? And especially mental health, because I truly believe, like you said, we talk about the physical, but if we could get a handle on the mental health, if we could work on that and embrace it, that's a big, big thing in what we're going through. I think that's if you can get a handle on that, if you can work on that, everything else is gonna be a lot easier.
Yeah.
Physical, everything.
I agree with you. And the beauty of where we are at today is that women are now again being given choice, which is really, the most empowering thing. So I applaud you. Get your blood test, see where your levels are at, and then, decide for yourself what your goals are. Because some women have goals, for example, they might have pain in their joints, right? We know frozen shoulder is very common. So use that as just one example. So their goal might be to treat symptoms. Other women, as you mentioned, might have no symptoms, but that doesn't mean that their body isn't degenerating because of a loss of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. So they could be on a fast track towards osteoporosis, but not feel it. And so you have to discern for yourself and decide, okay, my objective here is to treat symptoms if I have symptoms. Some women have, I had dozens of symptoms. And some women sail through without issue, but every woman will have degeneration inside of their body because of that lack of estrogen primarily, but also progesterone and testosterone. And so, whether you feel it or not, there's protective elements to the hormones, right? And so, you might choose that this is the right path for you so you could extend your longevity, even if you're asymptomatic today.
Right, and you said it, bone health. We don't typically go for bone scans or even deal with our bone health till we get older, till we see postural changes,
So it's
till
a mistake, by the way.
it
So
is
it's
a
a
mistake.
mistake. I spoke to my doctor and I said, I'd like a DEXA scan. And they said, well, we'll do it at 65. And I said, if you do it at 65, it's too late. I would like to know where I am today, not when
Right.
I have osteoporosis.
Right, I want a baseline, and
Yeah.
I wanna work on that baseline, and
Yeah.
that, our lifespan, like you said, our lifespan, and longevity, those are really big things now, and our lifespan has increased, and women especially, we're living longer, and we have this time period now where we used to be, or at least our parents' age, they're grandparents now. Most of us aren't anymore. We're still waiting for our kids who are, like, in their early 20s, and they're not planning on having kids till their 30s.
They're in no rush.
No,
I
no,
know. I
no.
have two also.
Yeah. No, we're not doing that. But so we have this time period where also we can spend so much time working on ourselves because 'cause we're not worried
Mm,
about helping out with the grandkids or, even parents that are growing older, loved ones, partners that are growing older with us. But we have this time now to really like invest. And like you said, I just think women need to get good baseline on where they're at right now and whatever symptoms they may be having, even if it's just general fatigue, that they address it.
yeah, absolutely. And, the whole question of longevity is an interesting one because, yes, women typically do outlive men, just by pure numbers, right? We live longer in terms of years. But that doesn't mean that we live in a better state. If you actually look at, for example, the population in nursing homes, it's primarily women who have very limited mobility, right? So their joints and their muscles have stiffened to a point where they're immobile. A lot of them are incontinent.
It's true.
Right? And we know that a lack of estrogen in that area is the reason for UTIs, incontinence, all sorts of things. And a lot of these women also present with later stage dementia. And research that's coming out today is actually suggesting that estrogen has protective measures against all of these things: your bones, your muscles, your mind, your urinary tract, all these things. So, again, you may be sailing through menopause, and if you are, consider yourself lucky because that is rare. But you want to make sure that the last third of your life, you are in that point of vitality, right? That you're able to live and truly enjoy life, that your body cooperates at that point.
I mean, we're all we're all headed to the inevitable.
Yes.
We can't stop it, but if we can, it's like owning a home. If you can continually do maintenance, freshen up, replace old things that aren't working or working as well. I mean, that's invest in your we'll invest in our homes, but we need to invest in ourselves. And like you said, even if we do, we end up in the assisted living, well, let's be the most um energetic and bouncing all around women in the assisted living home.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm so grateful that we're having this conversation because again, as women, we need to educate ourselves. We need to talk because our medical system, as it's set up today, the last 2 generations, 3 generations of doctors that have been trained didn't even have any sort of training on menopause or hormones or whatnot. I mean, an endocrinologist might know something, but that's highly specialized. It's difficult to get into their offices. And so, if you are feeling changes in your body and you're teetering on that early 40s and you're feeling tired, and all of a sudden you have sleep disturbances, or all of a sudden, your stress tolerance is lower, or you're feeling anxiety that you never felt before, or depression, and there's a whole list, take it seriously. Take it seriously. Go to your doctor. I know that's your first line. And ask for your blood tests. See if you can, check out whether hormones are playing a factor. Doctors will likely, 9 out of 10 women will tell the same story, that they will be told that it's aging, that it's normal, or it's stress. They'll likely be handed something like an SSRI, which is like for to ease anxiety or depression if that's the primary symptom. Doctors are not at that point going to say, maybe you're entering into perimenopause. So it's so important that we know this so we can advocate for ourselves. Right. Because I had personally around, from 40 to 45, I had seen lots of doctors with a myriad of symptoms, and not one doctor, not one, had said to me, this could be because you're going into perimenopause and your hormones are fluctuating. Um, and I'll share a deeply personal story. I've actually never shared this on a podcast before,
All right.
but it's
You're
deeply
lucky.
personal. When I was 45, actually, I kept getting this series of recurrent UTIs, so urinary tract infections, and I was 45 years old, so relatively young.
Yeah.
And the last infection that I got in the series, I had taken antibiotics like I had taken, the 3 or 4 times before. And this was all within a span of a year. And because I had taken antibiotics so many times, the infection didn't respond the same way. It didn't clear my system, and the infection went into my blood.
Oh,
And when that happens, you get a blood infection and you go into septic shock. And
right.
so
Yeah.
it's extremely dangerous. So I nearly lost my life. I was hospitalized for a week. It's very, very dangerous. And what happened was is that after that, I had gone to see the urologist, the nephrologist, the cardiologist, because, and my same question to every single doctor was, I'm 45 years old. Why did this happen to me? I'm too young. And they all said, sometimes it just happens. And I wasn't gonna take that. I was like, "No, this just doesn't make sense." And so I had to figure it out on my own. And this was about, I guess, 5 or 6 years ago now. And I came across a book that changed my life. This was Dr. Mary Claire Haver had written a book called, I'm sure you know about it, The New Menopause.
Yep.
And I read it, and I'm telling you, Kelly, I cried. And he goes, "'Cause my thinking was, how come this doctor understands and none of my doctors understand what's going on?"
I totally understand that.
So I took the book and I went to my whole team of doctors, and I said, "I need estrogen." And they all looked at me like I had 3 heads. I got the estrogen and I've never been better. Like, So not just the estrogen, I got the progesterone, I got the
Right.
testosterone, I got so the idea here is that my story is unique in that my body really did need the hormones. I'm not saying everyone does, but my body did. And we are from a medical standpoint, they haven't quite connected the dots just yet in terms of all of what can happen in a woman's body because of a loss or fluctuation in estrogen. And so, it's for us to talk about it and educate ourselves and lift each other up because we can't rely on those that just haven't been taught
Right.
this particular part of science.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your story because it's not easy. It's not easy. And for whatever reason, we women feel either embarrassed or ashamed or scared to tell our stories, but we don't even realize that that story probably just helped many, many women who are sitting here. Maybe it's not UTIs, but they're like, I had something. I went to my doctors. No one could figure it out. No one listened to me. I thought I was going crazy, but no, it's simply a matter of, and you are in the rare percentage that you advocated for yourself and you stood up for yourself and you did the research. Most women, we tend to take what the doctor says as gospel and, just move on. I've always suggested to any woman that I've talked to, build a team
Mhm.
because there are so many different facets. Like you brought up mental health right from the start. You need a team of people that you can go to that can look
Yes.
and are experts in these different symptoms because you might need someone that just works on your diet and exercise while you have someone that helps you with your mental health, while you have someone that's looking at your labs. And, try to create that network and have your providers talk to each other. But I so applaud you for pushing and not giving up, not taking that as, that is the answer and I have to accept it. It's so rare.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I guess the lesson learned and the message that I would send to every woman is when there's something that you are experiencing that is different from your baseline, different from your normal,
That's
pay
awesome.
attention to it. Pay attention to it, right? So a lot of women, for example, will say that in around the magical age of 45 that they woke up one day and they had put on all this weight. They didn't change their diet. They didn't change their exercise routine. They put on weight. That's okay. Don't just dismiss that. A lot of women will go for blood tests at 45 years old, for example, and all of a sudden out of nowhere have cholesterol issues. They've been fine and now they have cholesterol issues. Or all of a sudden they've become insulin resistant. They're diabetic. And they've spent 45 years completely fine and all of a sudden they're diabetic. And the doctors are trained to go, here's a medicine. Take it for your cholesterol, your diabetes, and exercise more to lose the extra weight.
Right. And
And
I,
we know that again, you know, this is absolutely tied to perimenopause, and a loss and a fluctuation of estrogen can cause all sorts of metabolic issues. So I think once we just become aware of this, it also takes away this burden of shame because I think a lot of women you know, well, I must be really failing, right? All of a sudden I put on weight or I guess I was eating the wrong things because all of a sudden I have a cholesterol issue. Like I guess I need to change my entire diet, right? Like it's such a confusing time. Um so yeah.
it
We-
also compounds the mental health aspect of it
Yes.
because while you're dealing with what your hormones and your changing body is doing to your mental health, the the feeling of banging your head against a wall, not getting any answers, being depressed, being ashamed because you don't know what's going on. You don't have the tools. to work with what's going on. And then you fall into there's so many women that fall into depression, which then leads to drinking more or whatever it
Yes.
is that you use to calm your nervous system down, for or coping mechanism, and it just spirals.
Yes.
And I personally think if every woman could talk with someone in the mental health field, whether it's a therapist, someone that deals with menopause or
Mhm.
some sort of stress management, that would be my get your blood work and start talking about what's living in here and what's it doing to your heart and your soul.
Yes, and I'm so glad you're talking about this because I think I mentioned at the beginning, somewhere upwards of 40% of women will actually talk about changes to their mental health as being the first things that they notice, right? And I have this little I have a list here. I'm going to see if I could try to show it. So this is I use this often when I talk about menopause. It's actually a list. There's like 34 known symptoms to perimenopause. It's a very, very long list. And the only reason that this is relevant to our conversation is everything that's in yellow is related to our emotional health. Right. And so what we're looking at things like panic attacks that you would have never experienced before, which of course people will probably think that it's a heart attack. They'll think it's physical. It's very, very frightening. Low mood or depression, mood swings, brain fog. All of a sudden, you used to run like maybe you ran like a company, you had a sort of a high executive job, you ran the house, you did, and all of a sudden you find that you're not processing things in the same way. You're forgetting things. You're not as sharp, and all of this is compounded by the fact that you start having sleep disturbances too. Right? So it becomes a joke that all of us at that age are awake at 3 AM, that we should start a little text club because we're all awake at that time, right? But it's very, very disruptive, and so it's a compounding sort of thing. A lot of women actually get diagnosed with sleep apnea at the age of 45 instead of just perimenopause sleep disturbances, they get magically diagnosed with sleep apnea. So, anyways, difficulty concentrating, issue with memories, fatigue, low energy, it sort of goes on and on and on. And so, what I want women to know is if there is something that you're feeling that is different from your baseline over a period of time, not like you had a difficult Monday and you're tired, but over a couple of weeks, months, you notice, you know what, I don't feel the same way. I don't have the same energy. My patience is not the same. I'm having trouble at work. I'm snapping at the people that I love. I'm having trouble sleeping. All of this is really the telltale signs, early signs usually, of perimenopause, long before you'll see any sort of changes to your cycle or your period. It might later on, your period might get heavier or might get shorter, not in the
Right.
beginning.
No, no, in the beginning, you stay kind of the same as you were.
Yeah, a lot of women, when I speak to them, especially when they're on the younger side in their 40s, they almost always say to me, because this is the narrative they were taught, I can't be going into perimenopause or, transitioning to menopause because I still have my period.
Right. They don't understand. They don't understand that menopause is one day, that
Right.
it's the one 24-hour window that you haven't had period for 12 months.
Right.
Nobody understands that. It often upsets me too because I think perimenopause should have been the theme all along. That what we said, it was menopause everything and it didn't do women, it did women a disservice to just think menopause when the reality is it's all perimenopause. You
Right.
do have postmenopausal symptoms that you will have to work through. Most women, not all women, but the bulk of it is coming in on perimenopause. And if we can have preventive health during perimenopause, the rest of it will be a lot easier to handle.
So much easier. And again, like just that level of education of, okay, look, these are all the things that, you could possibly experience. And, we do this with women who are of reproductive age. If, before they get pregnant or while they're pregnant, we go, these are some of the things that could happen during delivery. These are some of the things that could happen afterwards. We know not all women experience all symptoms, but we educate them. These are, so that if it does happen, okay, know that that's part and parcel of what's going on and there are options. So you could feel, very nauseous and morning sickness. I'm talking about pregnancy now. That would be common and there are things we can do about it. Great. That's the same level of conversation we need to have about this other change in hormones as well. You could experience sleep disruptions, you could experience brain fog. That's common. And there are things we can do. Here are some of the things that we can do to help you with that.
Knowledge is power,
Hmm.
and we need to arm ourselves with that. And what I love about um, professionals in their fields right now, you are a perfect example. Women are rising up, and so I started as a chiropractor, and then as our generation started to go through all this, the conversation started, the questions started, advocacy started to rise. Women in professional fields in health and wellness started to add on these specialties, which just warms my heart. Women jumped in and said, I need to become knowledgeable about this. Now there's information. How do we help women? And I could go on and on about that, but just like certified menopause specialist. I mean, women can turn to you. Let's say they're turning to you for attachment style, relationship issues, but now you have that extra knowledge to be able to connect some of those dots that might not have made sense to them in this age, and great
Yeah.
divorce and things like that.
Yeah, and it leads to some really interesting conversations because I work with women, I work with men, and I work with couples. And the couple works is actually very interesting because most of the time the woman doesn't know what's going on because it's not part of our educational system, right? So they certainly are not in a position to then inform or educate their partner. And all I hear from the partner oftentimes is, she's just not the same woman. And
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
correct, she is not. Right?
No.
And the woman usually carries, and this is not funny, they usually carry a tremendous amount of shame. Like, I used to be able to cook big meals and run the house, and now I'm just tired thinking about it. And you can tell that she feels like she's failing, right? She's got these expectations. And so it's a matter of understanding that you have to renegotiate what it is that you're doing together as a couple at that point in time. The the changes in estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone in a woman, not just the decline, but the fluctuations, they do create an impact on how the woman sees herself because now we have fluctuating oxytocin, fluctuating dopamine. All of these hormones are interconnected, right? And so it really does impact the relationship that a woman has to herself and then also the relationship that she has to her intimate partner. I mean, I'm not going to get into too much great depth here, but even when we're talking about intimacy, there's huge impacts there as well. So all of this needs to be understood if we are to navigate, in the healthiest way and to maintain, the health of those relationships of those that matter to us.
Early on, when I started recording the podcast, I actually had a husband come on. He was a friend of mine, and he kept asking me, "Can I tell my story about menopause? Can I tell my story?" And I said, "Sure, come on. It'd be good to get a perspective." And there was some humor. Like, I don't know who she is. The demon came out. All these things. But then he started to talk to other men. So he said if there's any advice that he could give other men that their wives are going through perimenopause and menopause would be, and I don't know many women that would be open to this, but we should be. He said, take, go with your wife to her OBGYN appointment, to her doctor. Go, ask her, go, listen to what's going on and hear what she's going through, get firsthand knowledge of all these things. And then he said, because when you're armed with that, you can communicate, you can understand, which, like you said, we could go on and on for hours about your intimate relationship, your day-to-day relationship, and how it's all affected. But even if men took time to research and educate themselves on what their partners are going through, would really it would start to wipe away that shame and that stigma that women have about failing, if they felt they had support inside them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the support of a partner is everything, right? So we know in our society, we've made some strides towards gender equality, but we know that for the most part, we still see the trend that the woman generally carries most of the emotional labor of the home and the
Right.
children, right? Remembering the dentist appointment, remembering to pick up the milk, what's being cooked for dinner tonight, which kid has school photos tomorrow, like whose birthday is it next week? That's sort of generally the woman who's handling this. And then when menopause hits or perimenopause, and she's not sleeping and she has brain fog and difficulty concentrating, and she's starting to have anxiety or panic attacks, her ability to function at that same level is greatly diminished. The
Yeah.
problem is that she's not going to recognize that. She's going to keep trying to perform at the same level because A, usually she doesn't have a choice,
Right.
right? Because mothers don't get days off. Or B, she's going to shame herself into feeling like I'm a failure if I don't have, the perfect birthday party for my son next week or whatever it may be, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so it becomes a point of which we know that women at that juncture often become overwhelmed, burn out, and then that's where we tend to see a rise in issues with the coupleship. And we see a lot of these memes on the internet. We see it played out in movies where the wife or the mother, usually around 45 years old, comes into the scene and declares, "I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm done." And the husband, dumbfounded. "What do you mean you're done?" "I'm moving out. I'm done." And the husband's like, "What, nothing happened. What do you mean?" There's such a disconnect between the lived reality of the woman who feels like she's doing everything and on a shoestring because she's barely holding it together, and the man who really doesn't understand all of these things that are unfolding in the woman's body, right? That are taking tremendous effort for her to just, it's tremendous effort at some days just to get out of bed, but then to do everything else. And so that's where we're seeing a lot of a disconnect in relationships breaking down and men going, "I don't know. One day she just went crazy." I hear this all the time. "She just
yeah.
went crazy."
Yeah. Absolutely. I've heard that so many times.
And it's a terrible narrative, right? Because she didn't go crazy. You would have seen for months and months and years, probably leading up to this, that she was overwhelmed. She was exhausted. She didn't have the same resilience to stress. She probably would have asked you many, many, many times for help, but, you know, probably stopped asking at some point because it was just too much trouble to ask. And so that breaking point where we see where women are just like, "I'm done," that usually very, very much collides with that midpoint of perimenopause.
And you compound that with just the natural aging process,
Yes.
where women, we do it to ourselves, social media, society does it to us, where not only are we dealing with all these symptoms, physical, mental, that for most of us we don't even know what's going on,
Right. Yeah.
don't even realize some of it. And on top of that, we're becoming depressed and sad because we're aging, and I don't look like I used to. Is my partner still attracted to me? You brought up the
All of
weight
it.
gain.
Mhm.
Um, it snowballs.
Yeah.
Although then you get to the point with these divorces where women turn around and they don't, not all of them, but like there's a good percentage of women now that don't even seek out another relationship because
For
like,
for a period of time, actually, that's quite common, right? For a period of time, especially if you've been in a long-term relationship, women want to, finally have the opportunity to just focus on themselves. A lot of women were raised with the idea that self-care is selfish. In order to be a good mother, a good lover, a good wife, a good friend, a good sister, you had to put everyone else first at your expense, right? And so finally, women get to a place where they go, I don't want to live this life anymore. I'm overwhelmed. It's usually around the time that the kids may or may not be moving out,
yes, empty
going to
nesting.
college, that sort of thing. And so a lot of women for a period of years, they'll move out and they'll sort of live a quieter life. And they'll go through a process of reclaiming themselves, finding themselves. Women talk about this as a rebirth. They start to figure out, okay, what are some of the things that I need in my life? What brings me pleasure and joy? What are some of the things that I will no longer tolerate? And that's a lot of the work that I do with some of my clients is helping them to understand, okay, given your own attachment style, we didn't really talk about attachment styles, but it's fine. But, what is it that your personality needs in order to feel whole and satiated, right? Because it's your time to carve that out. So a lot of women do get back into relationships, but after they've done the work on themselves, after they feel more balanced and stable and they know what type of relationship they now want in their life. But your point is very well taken. Like when all of this sort of happens, there's a true loss of identity at that time
Yes.
period, and that's very, very hard, to deal with. So, especially if, for example, to talk about attachment styles for a minute, if you're anxiously attached, you would have learned to perform for love. You would have learned that you had to give, give, give in order to receive love, and if all of a sudden you can't perform at the same level, your anxiety is going to greatly be impacted. Am I still lovable if I can't do A, B, C, D? If I'm not as productive at work, am I still likable? Am I worthy? All of these things really do come into sharp focus around this time. So, if ever girlfriends needed other girlfriends around,
It is
yeah,
now.
yeah.
It is now. I
Yes.
said, when I first decided to do the podcast, the reason I started to do the podcast, I kind of started to have this idea, to start bringing experts. Maybe I could get people to talk about what's going on. Everybody's starting to come on the scene and talk about it. I was at a fitness class, a pole dance fitness class. I've told this story a million times. I was sitting there, all the girls at that particular day were 40 to 59, I believe.
Okay.
And we're all sitting there, and it's before we started doing anything. And one woman brings up, well, the instructor said, "How's everybody feeling? How's your day?" This one woman said, "Oh, it's been terrible. I don't understand it." And she started talking about it. And she said, she was 40, and she said, "I had a hysterectomy, so I have medical menopause came on surgically,
Surgical menopause.
and everything all at once." And she started telling us this, and we just stared at her. And she just let out so many things that she had never talked about. And you're talking to like a group of these Gen X women who typically, most of those girls in that room didn't form girlfriend circles or groups. They were more loners raising their families, had siblings or one good friend. So she tells her story. She starts crying. I was just blown away. The woman next to her immediately starts telling her story. Now she's 59 and she's going through
Mhm.
her symptoms. And the girl over here starts telling her story. And the next, everybody's crying, laughing, recording. And that's when I thought, wow. Again, I was not a big girlfriend group person, but at that moment I was like, I think I might become one. I
Yeah,
think I need to build my little community and network of support.
yeah,
And so exactly what you said, if ever we needed a time to have that friend circle, it's now.
yeah, yeah. I have a couple of friends that call it the menopause.
I
But,
love that.
yeah, it's just it's really nice to know that you can speak to, other people who are going through who may or may not be going through the same symptoms, but we're all sort of in this transition together. And did you try this? Did you try that? How did it work out? And it's extremely helpful. It's extremely helpful from physically, emotionally, psychologically. It's our girlfriends become really, really important to us, eh, supportively as we get older.
And so the instructor she was actually my very first guest on the podcast. She was 23. She was 23 and she's listening to this, but most of her students were midlife women. And so I said to her on the podcast, I said, Sylvia, what do you know about menopause? What were you ever told? And she's like, not what I heard in that room. This is all, and I was like, I think she heard like from her mom hot flashes, the typical symptoms. And I said, well, if there's anything that I can impart on you is start learning now. It's
Yes.
never too early to prepare.
Yeah, and it's such you know what I do? I have conversations with younger women too, and I say, just know that it will happen down the road because the worst is getting hit by it, and you're like, I had no idea it was coming, which is the story most of us share.
Huh?
So at least you know that it's coming. But even though I had heard that menopause was hot flashes, I think that's all I knew going into my 40s.
Me too.
When I started getting hot flashes, and I don't know if you remember your first ones, I didn't know what the hell it was. I started getting hot and I was like, oh my God, someone turned up the heat. And I think I blamed my husband. I was like, why is it so hot in here? And I'm sweating through my clothes. And then the next time it happened, I thought it was a panic attack because
Yes.
I honestly, it's, and I'm, because I didn't understand it, I didn't recognize it, and so it started to make me anxious, and so my heart started to beat fast, which heart palpitations, by the way, is a very common symptom of perimenopause, but my
Yes.
heart's going and I'm sweating and I'm like, I must be having a heart attack. And so it's so absolutely scary, some of these things, and we talk about it like it's no big deal, but
Yeah.
it is.
And so for me, I've never had a hot flash. And I still get a cycle. So I've not gone through menopause. I'm one of those late ones. I take things slow. But I did have the craziest like 2 years ago, I had like a week of night sweats. I didn't even know what was going on because I'm a cold person, so I couldn't understand why the sheets were soaking. And then for me, but like when you said frozen shoulder, my symptoms have been low back pain where I never had low back pain and there was no incident. There was no like, oh yeah, I remember when no, it's like been low back pain, some knee. So things that you don't normally think of or associate. It's things like that. And, driving down the highway, and most of us are going to do this. Driving down the highway, just, I saw a street or an exit sign. For whatever reason, I just started crying. And I don't know why, but I was so overwhelmed that then led into like, and now I'm done crying and I'm having an anxiety attack. What
Yeah.
is going on?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and all of these events are very scary, right? All of a sudden you have a pain in your back and like it's frightening. By the way, look into the musculoskeletal syndrome of perimenopause,
Yes.
right? So this has to do with joints and muscles. Low back is it's unfortunate, but if you are considering HRT, estrogen will
Yep.
help.
That was one of the biggest reasons when I finally figured out, uh, there's nothing is helping this, and I thought I need my levels checked because this is probably gonna be the culprit.
Yeah, and you're very smart to think, "Okay, I'm still cycling, but that doesn't mean that I have the optimal amount of estrogen in my body," right? So and there's 2 schools of thought here, right? Some if you find a doctor who's gonna work with you, some will talk about dosing you to the point where they have taken care of your symptoms, and then there's another school of thought around therapeutic dosing to prevent issues in the future. So we don't have to get into that too far, but it's complicated dosing for HRT only because as women we're all unique and it's very individualized.
It
So
is.
what works for me probably won't work for you and so forth, and so there's lots of formulations and it takes the average woman like 6 months to a year to sort of try different approaches to find the right one.
Yeah, it's a lesson in have patience,
Patience.
give yourself grace. You are not meant to be a rock star during this period. You are a rock star. You're not gonna feel like a rock star, and give yourself grace for that. Say, "I am the
Right.
best version of me right now,"
Mhm.
and it is
Yeah.
a rebirth, and I will be getting better, and there will come a day where this will be a memory.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've truly enjoyed this
Yes, I have
conversation.
loved it. We went
Thank you.
way to a different topic, and I love that we did 'cause
Perfect.
it's much needed, and thank you for sharing your story and being so authentic and just laying it out there from
Thank
your
you.
truth. That's all we can ever ask
Yeah.
is just give a little support, little guidance, and then just be there for one another.
Yeah, and along that vein, when you get your results back, and if you wanna have a conversation privately, reach out. We can
Oh,
talk
I will.
about it, like, if you want a little bit of support because, again, going through the journey, if you make the decision for yourself to go down the journey of HRT, you'll need some support there too
Right.
because,
Thank you.
it's not incredibly obvious.
No. Well, Bev, where can everybody let's start with like your socials. If we wanted to follow you and reach out, where would we do that?
Excellent. Thank you. So, my company name is Securely Loved. I do work as a relationship and attachment trauma practitioner, although we didn't spend a lot of time talking about that because my subspecialty is in menopause. But my website is securelyloved.com. My Instagram is securely_loved. And I do have a YouTube channel that I've put out some really, really great videos. I'm trying to figure out the algorithm. I'm not so good at social media, and I'm trying to get more people to see the channel. The channel is also called Securely Loved.
Okay, we will put that in the show notes so everyone can find you. And a website?
The website is securelyloved.com.
.com. So can you are you able to see clients nationwide virtually, or
Yes.
do you have to be in a specific state?
All of my consults are virtually. I
Awesome.
only do consults through like a private connection video link. And so Yeah, and I do offer a free introductory call because it's good to spend a little time with someone, get to know, okay, these are my objectives, and then I'll tell you right up front, like I'm a good fit for you, or no, you're looking for something else. And I think people will also enjoy. I have on my website a free attachment style quiz. So if you're unsure whether you're anxiously attached, avoidantly attached, or somewhere in the middle, you can take this little quiz and it gives you the results. And it's sort of, it's a starting point of awareness.
That's awesome. I want to encourage everyone to follow you or to reach out on your website because like we started this, you need a community and you need people that you can turn to. So build your community and start with Bev. Just or even just getting your content on YouTube will be so helpful. So thank you again for taking time out of your day. I know you're super busy and coming on and talking with me. Loved this so much.